The day I found the scratches, I stopped breathing for a second. They ran across the hood of my mother's restored 1969 Mustang in deep, jagged lines, cutting through the sky blue paint we had chosen together years ago. It looked less like vandalism and more like someone trying to erase her memory, one scrape at a time. That car wasn't just metal to me, it was grief, love, and unfinished conversations sitting on four wheels. My name is Clara, and if you've ever fought to protect the last piece of someone you loved, stay with me. My mother and I had started restoring that Mustang before cancer took her. On good days, she sat beside me in the garage with grease on her hands and old rock songs playing softly from a dusty radio. She used to smile and say, "When this car finally runs again, we're driving until the sun disappears." We never got that drive. After she passed, I finished the restoration alone. I worked cleaning houses during the day and spent my nights sanding rust, repainting panels, and teaching myself everything I could about vintage engines. Every dollar I saved went into that car. Every memory I couldn't let go of lived inside it. So when I saw those scratches, it felt personal. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Didn't think you'd freak out over an old car." I turned slowly and saw Dylan, the teenager from across the street, leaning against his porch with a soda in his hand. 18 years old, smirking like consequences were something that only happened to other people. "It looked beat up anyway," he added with a shrug. I wanted to scream. Instead, I got into the Mustang and drove away before he could see me cry. That night, I sat in my dark living room, staring at an old photograph of my mother and me beside the car when it was still rusted and unfinished. We were both smiling so hard our cheeks hurt. That's when I realized something. Dylan thought this was about paint, but he had damaged something sacred. And while I wasn't interested in revenge, I was done letting people disrespect grief like it was meaningless. Dylan had always been the kind of kid the neighborhood tolerated instead of corrected. Loud motorcycle at dawn, speeding through residential streets, careless jokes, small acts of entitlement everyone excused because his parents were wealthy and connected. His father ran the homeowners association. His mother hosted expensive neighborhood parties where everyone pretended everything was perfect. And Dylan moved through life believing rules were optional. Meanwhile, I was just the quiet woman across the street with paint-stained jeans and a half-restored classic car. But grief changes people. It teaches you exactly what matters. Over the next few days, I stayed calm. I documented the damage to the Mustang, took it to my cousin Nate's repair shop, and let him carefully begin restoring the finish. Then I started paying attention. Dylan's motorcycle was parked illegally almost every day, hanging halfway over the sidewalk. Its registration sticker was expired. His insurance status looked questionable. And after searching public records, I discovered a long list of unpaid citations tied to the bike. That's when I understood the bigger picture. Nobody had ever forced Dylan to face consequences before, so instead of yelling, I chose something quieter. I filed official reports through the proper city channels: parking violations, registration issues, documentation, evidence, facts, no exaggeration, no drama, just truth. A few mornings later, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee wrapped in both hands as the tow truck arrived just after sunrise. Efficient, silent, professional. By the time Dylan walked outside, the motorcycle was gone. The panic on his face said everything. His father stormed into the driveway making phone calls. His mother demanded answers from anyone who would listen. But the situation wasn't personal anymore. It had become legal, and the law doesn't care about arrogance. Later that afternoon, Sandy walked across the street toward me, wearing the same tight smile she always used when trying to control a situation. "Clara," she said carefully, "have you seen anything suspicious?" I looked up from my porch chair. "You mean the motorcycle with expired registration and unpaid violations?" Her expression shifted immediately. Greg joined her moments later, anger practically vibrating off him. "You knew this would happen," he snapped. I met his stare calmly. I knew accountability would eventually catch up. Then Dylan finally exploded. "You reported me over a scratch?" he shouted. "That's pathetic." I stood slowly and looked directly at him. "No," I said quietly. "You didn't scratch a car. You mocked someone's grief." For the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing to say. And maybe that was the moment everything started changing. The bike remained impounded while the fees stacked higher. Between citations, towing costs, registration problems, and insurance penalties, the total became overwhelming. The neighborhood noticed. The same people who once laughed at Dylan's reckless behavior suddenly avoided eye contact. His social media posts disappeared. The loud confidence faded. Weeks later, I saw him working at a local car wash. When I pulled up in the Mustang, he recognized me instantly. For a second, we just looked at each other. There was no anger left in his face, only exhaustion. He quietly cleaned the windshield, handed me the receipt, and stepped back. I tipped him generously, not to embarrass him, because I knew what it felt like to rebuild your life from the ground up. Around that same time, something unexpected began happening in my own life. I started working at a restoration garage owned by a woman named Miss Dory, a mechanic in her 60s who treated old cars like living stories. The first day I told her about my mother and the Mustang, she wiped her hands on a rag and said, "Pain can either harden you or shape you. Depends what you build with it." That sentence stayed with me. Slowly, I stopped seeing the Mustang as a symbol of loss. It became something else entirely, a reminder that I survived. I began teaching restoration basics to other women dealing with grief, burnout, and life transitions. What started as weekend garage sessions slowly grew into a real community program. We called it Her Drive. Women came from everywhere: nurses, single mothers, students, widows. Some had never held a wrench before. But week after week, they showed up, learned, laughed, and rebuilt more than engines. They rebuilt confidence, purpose, the ability to move forward. And somewhere along the way, I realized something important. The scratches Dylan left on that car didn't destroy my mother's memory. If anything, they forced me to stop hiding inside my grief and start turning it into something meaningful. About 6 months later, I received a handwritten letter in the mail, no return address. Inside was a note from Dylan. He didn't make excuses. He didn't ask for sympathy. He simply wrote that losing the bike forced him to confront who he had become. He said he had started taking community college classes and working nights to pay off his debts. He admitted he had spent years hiding behind attention, money, and image because he'd never learned responsibility. And then he thanked me, not for reporting him, for refusing to let him stay the same. I folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the glove compartment of the Mustang. Not because everything was forgiven overnight, but because growth deserves to be acknowledged. A few weeks later, I drove the Mustang out to the coastal highway my mother loved most. The windows were down, the ocean wind carried the scent of salt and summer through the car. At a scenic overlook, I parked and stood quietly beside the hood. "We finished it, Mom," I whispered. Behind me, I heard the soft sound of a motorcycle engine. Dylan pulled into the overlook slowly on a much older bike. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. He parked far away, removed his helmet, glanced toward the Mustang, and gave one small, respectful nod. Then he left. No speeches, no dramatic apology, just understanding. And honestly, that was enough. Because this story was never really about revenge. It was about reclaiming something. My peace, my voice, my future. People say healing is loud and dramatic, but sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like early mornings, steady work, and learning how to breathe again after loss. Sometimes it looks like restoring an old car your mother loved. And sometimes the people who hurt us end up confronting themselves in ways anger never could. Today, Her Drive continues to grow. Women from all over the city come through our garage doors carrying heartbreak, uncertainty, and stories they thought nobody would understand. They leave with grease on their hands and confidence in their eyes. As for me, I still drive the Mustang every Sunday morning, not because I'm holding on to the past, but because I finally learned how to move forward with it beside me, and maybe that's the real lesson. You don't heal by destroying people who hurt you. You heal by rebuilding yourself so completely that their cruelty no longer defines your story, 1 mile at a time.